Have you ever looked at Dark Souls and thought, boy, I'd like to play this as if it was the first time again? Well, do I have the run for you. It's the Dark Souls Randomizer. For those unfamiliar, randomizers are some of those mods that have become all the rage among longtime Souls players, as well as Zelda players and Hollow Knight players and Metroid players, and any game that drops an item, you can randomize it. Pokemon's fun too. These take items, enemies, and even bosses, and shuffle them all around, all over the map. However, today, we aren't simply tackling a DS1 randomizer. No, I've decided to run a multi-world randomizer with the Archipelago mod. And no, we're not talking about Everett and DeWitt's many-world interpretations. We're talking about using the power of the internet to scatter our items across 3 games at once. Howdy, I'm Prakuza, and welcome to DevBox, where today we're combining Dark Souls 1, 2, and Dark Souls 3 all into one cohesive experience, as Miyazaki always dreamed. This means that not only will a key item like the Lord Vessel not be handed out at Guinevere, but it could also very well be stuck in Lothric Castle at the Basin of Vows, and vice versa. It makes for quite the topsy-turvy little experience, since we never know where we'll find the key that will open the door to light our way to the endgame. And I must say, I thoroughly enjoy the renewed feeling of exploration and discovery that these randomizers inject into the all-too-familiar series. Also, the absolute brain-melting experience of having to swap between 3 games that play surprisingly more different than you might guess, given the sequential numbers in the titles. But without any further ado, let's dive into the heart of this run. So, as we jump into our first game, let's go over the order of operations from here on out. We'll be starting with DS1 and traveling about as far as we can before we get BK'd and need to get something from a different game before we can continue forward. These won't be entirely comprehensive runs, gathering every single check available, but we'll be as thorough as we reasonably can as we make our way through each area. Because remember, any item check could be important to any of the 3 games. Still, we'll be making our first visits through each world and seeing what keys we can get to unlock what paths we have available, along with the shocking surprises that come with the enemy randomizers we'll be supplementing these runs with. And as a quick introduction to what we need in DS1, we only have about 5 major items to find for the endgame, but we'll also need to check 2 separate boxes off the list. For the items, we need the Lord Vessel and the 4 Lord Souls in order to reach credits. And before we can even use those, we'll need to kill the Gargoyle and Quelaag replacements in order to ring their bells. However, there are other important items that could turn out to be necessary in order to reach those items. Things like the Key to the Depths, or Peculiar Doll, which might be blocking access to the other items we need in either this world or the other 2 games. With those goals set, let's get into the first game. In DS1, we'll be starting as a Pyromancer so that we can start at level 1 and have Pyromancer Flame right from go, which could be helpful but might otherwise be locked behind an unknown amount of progress. Since shops aren't randomized in my settings for this version of the Archie item randomizer, we'll have plenty of access to sorceries and miracles if we need them anyway. So the Pyromancer Flame is the only one of those 3 that could potentially get locked behind some traversal. We'll also be taking the Master Key as our starting gift, although that does admittedly mess with the logic of the randomizer, as the game doesn't think I should have immediate access to Valley of the Drakes and Blighttown and all those other areas. Also note that along with the Archie item randomizer, we'll also be adding the enemy randomizer for Dark Souls Remastered by the 5th map, an incredible Souls modder who's the mastermind behind the current DS1, DS3, and Elden Ring randomizers that you may have seen runs of either here or on Twitch. They're very popular. The dude's a beast of a programmer, and his mods are amazing. Definitely show him some love if you're kicking around Nexus mods after this. This means that we'll be randomizing both the items and the enemies in DS1. As we head out of our cell in the Undead Asylum, we run into our first little obstacle, a Drake that spawned where one of the non-aggro hollows is supposed to be. It's not a huge obstacle, but his collision gets in our way, and I need to punch it to get its attention so I can get through. Not the biggest issue, but a great example of how even the smallest change can completely recontextualize something as simple as walking through a hallway. We also run into a mushroom, which won't let us run past it in the narrow hallway, and can absolutely body me as I try to run through. As for the boss of the area, Asylum Demon has been swapped out for Capra. This unfortunately means that we can't plunging attack him right off the bat, and those dogs absolutely fuck me up on my first attempt after having gotten my real weapon. Hell, even getting into the arena for the rematch is tough, since there is a toxic rat and another dog hounding me at the fog wall. We're literally 5 minutes into the run, and I've already had to work my way around 3 separate obstacles before even getting into the first boss. I'm already feeling some curses coming for this seed. Undead Asylum should not be this much of a hazard, even if it is only a matter of some low-stakes hallway traps. Once we've killed the Copper Demon though, we can head up through to the bird and start doing the checks in and around Firelink. There are quite a few, and since we've got the Master Key, we can even find our way through to Darkroot and Undead Parish right away as well. For Firelink, we mostly find Archie items to send. In the version of the randomizer I'm playing, they appear as Prism Stones, and they even add Prism Stones to the inventory whenever they're picked up. Normally, the Archipelago has its own icon, but DS1 is currently in beta right now, which means it's possible to get running, but the dev, Arson Assassin, doesn't have everything in place for it to be on the full supported game list for the Archipelago main website. Once again, send love to the devs if you can. Arson Assassin is doing great work, and this DS1 Archie is super fun. As we continue through, we run into the chained prisoner who replaced the zombie dragon in Valley of the Drakes. Unlike the zombie dragon though, he is aggro as soon as he sees us. It's fine though, since we need to pick up the checks he's guarding anyway, and we're going to get him aggro regardless. He kills us once, and on a rematch, I thought I was being slick by getting it to the bridge, hoping it would get stuck and I could attack it for free with fireballs. However, I barely survive since the fireballs do almost nothing, and therefore I need to get into his distance in order to deal any damage at all. I also learned that Titanite demons can swap with any random enemy, which will be nice later if I ever want to farm up Demon Titanite. But for now, it means that they can occupy areas that they have no business taking up. On a luckier note, the Hydra in Darkroot Basin gets replaced by a zombie dragon, which means the way up to the Forest Hunters is completely free. We also kill it by stabbing it in the butt, and it can't even bother to attack us while we're back here. Here's hoping the actual Hydra is equally as passive wherever he winds up being sent to. My notes for the Sanctuary Guardian that has replaced the Andre Titanite Demon specifically says, never gonna kill that bitch. And yet here I am, dying as I actually try to fight it. Before getting distracted because my girlfriend needed help with a difficult UI in her game, remember your priorities, folks. I can always retry a boss in a game, but I can't retry being attentive when needed. At this point, I'll also note that we've bought ourselves a longsword so that we can have a solid go-to weapon to fall back on if we never find anything interesting, and we've also pumped it up to +5. Anyway, we do kill Sanctuary Guardian on the next attempt, and it doesn't even drop anything. Man, that was not worth the effort. But whatever, we aren't fighting these enemies for meager prizes. It's the passion before and after the battle is all the reward we need for this sanctuary beast. I decide to head to Havel, and this not Havel loser is a huge surprise. Definitely wasn't expecting the NPC enemies to be shuffled around too. Still got his ring as the drop though, so I guess those are still set to their vanilla locations with these settings. Oh, and would you look at that? Artorias replaced Moonlight Butterfly. Nope, right out of that one. I mean, he scaled down to be actually fightable, but I'm not looking to fight Artorias on a narrow bridge. At Undead Parish, we get another zombie dragon easy kill, this time replacing the bull. We also get a jagged ghost blade dropping off one of the ghosts that spawned in the square of Undead Parish. Kind of a rare drop that I rarely get to use, although I've heard that it doesn't scale very well, so it might only be a temporary upgrade from the longsword for now. We also get a massive boon in the form of a Firekeeper soul, which doesn't show in the gameplay here, but I was through the moon when I finally found one of those. Don't expect us to find many more for quite some time. As we attempt to unlock the path from the Dragon Bridge to Undead Parish, a Taurus demon spawns pretty close to his vanilla location actually. Only this time, under the bridge, and is quite the pain in the ass, since he blocks the way and most of his attacks throw me off into the ether. Oh, and then we get to the Vagrants, whose jizz really packs a punch. I'd call it anything else, but like, look at it. What else am I supposed to call that shit? Anyway, Ceaseless replaces the real Taurus demon. We can't cheese him like normal, because he's not in his normal location, so we'll have to do something close to the intended fight, baiting out his slams and wailing on him during the massive downtime. The only difference being that we can melee his face now, since he spawned halfway into the arena. Kind of a weird look, but I'll take it. With Ceaseless down, we head straight to the Gargoyle Arena, since we've already unlocked everything on the way, and you know what? Allow me to do a dramatic recreation of my reaction to seeing what it was, along with playing out the wonky cutscenes that play thanks to the randomizer. Me. Huh? What is that? It's got spikes. Is it like Gaping Dragon or... No, it's a little too dark for that. Fuck! Needless to say, I was not prepared to calamite this guy so early. The scaling actually makes him much less of an issue than I initially guessed he would be, and we nail it on the first try. Certainly helps that he refuses to do some of his more dangerous attacks. I'm guessing it's because the AI doesn't think it has room to do like the charging turnaround breath attack, or the fire from the sky. So he mostly sticks to a few foot stomps and the forward flamethrower attacks, all of which are pretty manageable even on this rooftop that only has a quarter of the space of his normal arena. Now that we've gathered as much as we can from the opening few areas, this seems like a great time to head back to Undead Asylum. Yeah, he seems to have been tuned up pretty hard by getting sent to the Stray Demon Arena, so we may come back here later. At least that's what my notes say. Spoiler, we do not come back here later, and this does not become relevant at any point in this run. We do spend a hot minute in New Londo, though, before moving forward, since there are a handful of checks we can grab before draining the water. While we don't find our vanilla parrying dagger, composite bow, or what I'd hoped to be an easy firekeeper soul, we do find a mushroom that bashes us into the water. Twice. So that's something. It's a thing. It's annoying, but it's a thing. Nah, but we get some archipelago items for the other games, and even better is we find a Black Knight who drops his Great Axe for us. It's kind of a neat boon for the run, since the Black Knight weapons are extremely powerful, but I won't be using it at the moment since I want to give the Jagged Ghost Blade a real opportunity for now. Oh, also, we find a tree on the roof of the church with Ingrid. Nothing really important about this, but it's kind of a funny location for an enemy like this to spawn. Kinda goofy, you know? Okay, heading down into Blighttown, we get attacked by a lot of these stupid giant worm centipede bug things. The ones from the Demon Ruins. Here, let me look the name up. Burrowing Rockworms. It would appear that is their name. According to the Wikidot, and they've given me no reason to not believe them, or flooded me with enough ads to brick my frickin' laptop, unlike the folks I don't visit anymore. Except sometimes when I don't want to scroll through the Google search. Anyway, the Iron Golem replaces Quelaag once we actually get through the back end of Blighttown. Will it bite us in the ass to not fully explore this place now? I don't know. Ask later when I have to clip this audio, but with an echo to show that it's from the past. Anyway, the Iron Golem himself is pretty easy at the moment, especially since he can't throw me off any bridges in this arena. Also, I get a great kill by stabbing the man in the balls until he dies. So glad it worked out so perfectly. 10 out of 10 cinema. After Iron Golem, we head over to the Ceaseless Arena right away, since I always head to Ceaseless right away anyway, and seeing as how we've already fought the vanilla boss that should show up here, who are we going to get as the replacement? Oh, Pinwheel. Guess it could have been worse. At least when he's in a new location, Pinwheel gets enough health to actually be a legitimate threat, especially when the clones can snipe us from so far away in this arena. That is until he jumps off the edge and instantly ends the fight for us. Like, sure, I'll take the simple and clean finish here, but I've really grown to appreciate Pinwheel as a real challenge thanks to that Stupid Fingers run, and was hoping to get an actual fight out of him. Besides, it always feels so heartless to pound him into the dirt like some nobody. Dude's one of few bona fide multi-phase bosses in DS1. He deserves more respect on his name and on his stats. Anyway, once we're done with this little excursion past Blighttown, we head back into the Great Hollow real quick for some Twinkling Titanite by killing the Crystal Lizard replacements. We also get an incredibly meta moment where we need to kill a tree inside of a bigger tree. You ever held so much hate in your heart that you killed a motherfucker inside of another motherfucker? I also go for some checks behind the Great Hollow, and boy did I forget that I set the mimics to be automatically aggressive, because this guy sure did jump up and start wailing on me immediately. Quite the surprise when the game decided to remind me that mimics were actual threats. Alright, time to head up Sen's Fortress, which actually goes a lot better than I initially expected. A lot of locations so far have actually been kind of a nightmare because of the stupid dragon feet, which keep spawning all over the place. And I was really worried that they'd appear here somewhere and completely halt my progress. But I gotta say, the randomizer was pretty nice for most of this area. Prepare for that to not be the case moving forward. Like at the top, where Iron Golem is replaced by the Handman himself. Have I ever mentioned on this channel that I'm really not good at Manus? Because I'm really not good at Manus. You know what? Let's pivot for a second, explore Lower Undead Burg, get some extra souls while we're down there, and boom, we can finally update our weapon. If you remember, we did find that Black Knight Great Axe off the Black Knight that spawned in New Londo a while back. And this is actually my personal favorite of the Black Knight arsenal. Is it because this is the best of these weapons? Hell no. It is actually, by far, the worst. It has terrible range and a ridiculously slow moveset for both the R1 and the R2. However, the one-handed R2 is an incredibly fun jumping attack. Not that we have the strength to use it at the moment, but when we get there, we still probably won't use it because it has very little actual utility, aside from looking sick. So now that we've got a +5 Black Knight Great Axe, thanks to those Twinkling Titanite we farmed in Great Hollow, Manus kills me anyway. Damn, I really do suck at this guy. Even when Iron Manus here has like half the health and damage that he normally does. Thank you, randomizer scaling. Guess it doesn't matter how nerfed he gets though, because this Seeker of Darkness is ready to put a handsome beatdown on me every time I try to clap him back. He doing good over there? Yeah, he gets me half a dozen more times before I finally lock in, learn his moveset, and he gives up and starts walking into a corner forever. It's how it goes sometimes with randomizers. Like Calamite not using his whole moveset, sometimes bosses will bug out and hand over a free win. And hey, I won't look a gift horse in the mouth. Besides, I was on a clear path to victory anyway. Also, I'm sick of getting punched in the dick by this guy, so fuck it. Okay, Enter Londo time. This will be our last stop before swapping games, so get ready to say see you later to DS1. But not goodbye. Never goodbye. Or we can get Sanctuary Guardian to replace the first Gargoyle and keep us locked here for a hot minute. Actually, this goes surprisingly fine. I really am not good at fighting this guy, so I always expect Sanctuary Guardian to be an absolute pill whenever he's randomized into a weird spot like this. But this one goes fine? Yeah, it goes fine. The second Gargoyle is replaced by a Titanite Demon, which will hopefully go a lot better since those are much simpler, but more jank, enemies. Not much else of note really happens in Enter Londo. Replacing the archers makes them easier, and the scaffolding didn't really offer any obstacles. In which case, let's get to the bosses. Who we got? Ooh, Priscilla. Good to see that she finally got out of the painting, but she didn't get very far. One issue that comes from finding Priscilla here is that when she isn't in her own arena, it turns out that we can't see the footprints on the ground when she's walking around while invisible. That being said, it isn't really that much of a problem, because as soon as we do see and hit her, holy shit, that damage. There's a reason this is one of my favorite weapons in the game, even if the range absolutely sucks. So, in about 10 seconds, we're already onto the cutscene and trying not to let the wonked up cinematics break our composure before the next boss arrives. Ah, yeah, I haven't really explained that yet, huh? Well, for any boss that has a mid-fight phase shift separated by a cutscene, the randomizer will often load in two separate bosses, one for pre-cutscene and one for post-cutscene. This will come up again very soon, as DS3 certainly has way more of these multi-phase cutscene bosses. In this case, our fight is Quelaag. Neat. Holy shit, that damage again. We are absolutely blasting through both of these ladies. And with this, we can finally move on to the next game. And you know what? While it might work to head on to 2 next, I want to go in order of my own favoritism, because I'm doing this stuff for fun anyway, so let's head to Dark Souls 3 right now. Alright, as we get ready to start up Dark Souls 3, we should talk about what we're looking for here. Similar to DS1, we need 4 Lord Souls, although in this game they're the Cinders of the Lords, These are the only 4 checks that are mandatory for completing the game, but again, there are some other checks that could be important for progression in order to find the final keys we need to face off against the final boss. These could include anything from the Basin of Vows to the small envoy banner, or the contraption key, the final one being for the first DLC. And with that setup, we can pick our character, a mercenary who starts with a flamberge, that she can only use in 2 hands. But at least we got lucky with something that we can equip at all. We also are immediately given a ton of items right away. Some weapons, some armor, lots of soul items, random upgrade materials, and status healing medicines. One notable item we've received, however, is an Estus shard, 3 of them in fact. Although I gotta say, this scrolling progression of new items really gets in the way at the start. Seriously, DS1, you're giving me too many things lately. Guess that's what I get for getting all the way up to Anorlando before ducking over to another game. Once we're fighting though, we aren't exactly perfectly set for some of the stranger enemies we'll be running into. Gotta pay special attention to those crabs that we find in the very beginning, because they will absolutely fuck me up if I'm not careful. And they do. But we don't need to stay here in the cemetery for too long. Instead, let's go fight the boss and get out of here. Who replaced Edict's Gundyr? Oh, that's Champion Gravetender. As the first boss, before we can upgrade our gear or level up with any of the soul items we found. Fuck. Yeah, I'm not sure if I could have rolled for a more cursed first boss, except for maybe like Nameless King or Gale or something. Like, this is a heinous start, since not only does Champion Gravetender come with 3 wolves, but after beating him down to half health, a Great Wolf will pop right into the fight and immediately start wailing on me. Definitely considered quitting this run, like right here, but sunk cost said I'd already gotten far enough into DS1 and actually got this damn set of mods running in the first place, that I had to simply bash my skull against this brick wall until I got through it. Also, that would be some real coward shit to leave now. This is supposed to be some sort of challenge, right? Then buck up and get the fight done. Well, after about a dozen deaths, I do exactly that. Then, once we're finally able to head into Firelink Shrine, we run into our second issue. Turns out, the coiled sword is absolutely a key item that I need in order to progress at all. Cool, so we're stuck at Firelink already. Oh wait, the NPC replacing the master dropped the coiled sword. Sick. Moving forward to the High Wall of Lothric. Before we head into the High Wall, we also find the Black Knight Great Axe in the Shrine Handmaiden shop. Ooh, neat. Maybe we can keep a theme going across all 3 games. Granted, I don't really know if 2 has a Black Knight arsenal, or stand-in equipment to fit the same vibe, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Well, we've already died a lot on this run, so much so that I completely gave up on doing a death count for the rest of the video moving forward. So goodbye to that useless data that will be getting deleted from the notes while I write out my script. As such, I'll die uselessly trying to get items guarded by the dragon. Was it worth it? Who cares, but ultimately no. Alright, let's see who replaced Vort already. Oof. Phase 1 Lorien. And we don't even get a fun cutscene with wonky animations and rigging to make the replacement more worth it. Well, at least the scaling makes Lorien a joke. Prepare for this to be the case for a while, actually. Now that we've got some levels behind us and a Black Knight Great Axe at +2, we won't be running into any struggles like that Gravetender starting boss for a while. One benefit of being the second game in the Archie list, it'll be even better for the final one. So hopefully that makes it clear why 2 is being held until I'm roughly halfway through DS3 as well. And we're finally into the point where the game starts to really open up, with full access to the Undead Settlement, Road of Sacrifices, and Farron Keep, all now available to us, including all of the item checks that those 3 areas include. A lot of opportunities for key items and materials to upgrade our build and prepare to slaughter even more bosses. Oh, and lots of opportunities to die. Horribly. A lot. Didn't I say that we wouldn't be struggling like a minute ago? Well, most of these deaths are from being overeager and trying to rush through the location. A slight touch of patience would do me a lot of good here. Too bad I haven't found that check yet. Anyway, once we actually get through the areas, we can start fighting some bosses again. Who's next on the list? Old Demon King on the Curse-Rotted Greatwood replacement. Or should I say the Curse-Rotted Demon King. Love the name changes in these mods. How about the boss fight? Well, we both do pretty good damage to each other, so this really comes down to who has the better ability to dish out attacks without getting overwhelmed by the other. Oh yeah, him. Definitely the Curse-Rotted Demon King. Cool. Well, on a rematch, yeah, that damage rips him apart. Such a weird effect of the randomizer, having a weapon like this so early and easily. Yeah, starting so early with a weapon like the Black Knight Great Axe does cause one issue though, as most items are kinda boring finds, since it's not like I'll be swapping my weapon or armor out anytime soon. Especially if I want to be able to make it through DS3 and eventually get to the other two games. Because like, look at how we smashed the absolute hell out of the Crystal Sage replacement. It's Eodex Gundyr, or in this case, Crystal Gundyr. I mean, it's not like Eodex is the healthiest boy normally, or that the scaling for Crystal Sage would beef him up that much more, but this is pretty ridiculous at this point in the game. On our way into the Cathedral of the Deep, we kill some NPCs and then see the only cutscene to be seemingly affected by the randomizer. Not sure why Gale isn't showing up here, or why it's instead me, but this was kind of freaky when I tried to open the way to the DLC before quickly leaving this behind. Deeper in, we find a few places to die, like when the Golden Wing Knights showed up and absolutely blast my entire ass with that fucking spin to win. On an easier note, we get the boss, Champion Gundyr, who has replaced Deacons. And yeah, crazy that Champion is somehow easier than some random big enemies scattered around the rest of the location. I mean, he's hardly easy, and I'm especially terrible at this fight in particular. Put him in the same list as Lorien and Manus for Dark Souls bosses that I'm very much not practiced at. Even watching it back, I hardly know what I'm seeing with those dodges and hitboxes and whatnot. Like, is any of this real or not? It's also kind of thematic going from Eodex guarding the cathedral to Champion being the final boss inside. Love the little bits of odd storytelling that comes out of changing up the order like that, and getting little patterns that make for neat little fanficky style story beats. Like a what if for both versions of Gundyr meeting up and becoming followers of Aldrich. Still, it only takes 2 attempts for us to get our win and not get the small doll that we'd normally come here in the first place for. Hopefully that won't be a problem moving forward. Right. Randomizer. Should have seen that coming, I guess. Well, with the cathedral done, let's hurry through Farron Keep. We don't really find anything of note on the way through here anyway, so instead it's time to get right into the next boss fight. Funny, Abyss Wolnir does feel like another vanilla adjacent enemy placement. Strange of him to appear ahead of the catacombs as opposed to at the end of them. Neat stuff. The fight is pretty simple though, so it might have been more interesting to either put him in his normal arena, or maybe cut him from the boss roster and add a duplicate somewhere, since he doesn't even touch me as I wail on his bracelets. Well, with Wolnir dead, we can now ransack his home, although the giant skeleton balls don't really like us coming through here. Stupid vanilla hazards. Definitely some annoying deaths here, but most of the randomization isn't too terrible. We get a lot of perfectly manageable enemy encounters, which is quite the blessing considering how absolutely hellish this section could be if the randomizer had decided to throw tons of massive, aggressive enemies at me the whole time through. As for the boss, we've got Vort, finally making his return after the cutscene earlier on. And we stomped this abyssal void into a partially frozen hell. I'll note that he's much stronger here, and tankier. I mean, who's ever heard of Vort being able to take so many hits from a weapon this powerful? That's not to say it isn't good damage, but I certainly was expecting more oomph from a Black Knight weapon against Vort, of all people. However, with Vort done, we can finally make it to Irithyll, and this will actually have to be where we stop our foray into Dark Souls 3. There might be a few more places we can hunt down for more checks, and we can even go into the Smoldering Lake and fight the old Demon King replacement, who in this case is phases 2 and 3 of Lady Frida, which is to say, fuck that unless it's completely necessary. It wasn't. Which means it's time to finally head out of Dark Souls 3 so we can broaden our horizons and gather some more prizes in our possession before we get old, by heading into 2. Okay guys, it's the moment I'm sure many of you have been waiting for. Time for me to actually play Dark Souls... Wait. Oh, I wasn't getting ready to play Dark Souls 2. I'm playing Kingdom Hearts 2. And here I thought this was going to be easy. Good thing I've got a real hard game to fill out the middle slot. I'm only half joking, by the way, because we're playing on critical mode and I left the data bosses on as possible important checks. For those of you confused by what those words I said mean, critical mode essentially means that by about the mid-game, enemies will be two-shotting me, and the data bosses are basically millennia, but every other attack is waterfowl. More on that later, we'll get there. For now, let's go over the goals to reach the end of the randomizer for Kingdom Hearts 2. There are a few options, including the proof hunt, which means finding 3 specific checks that are hidden somewhere in the 3 worlds. Then there's the lucky emblem hunt, which means finding a certain number of lucky emblems, little Mickey Mouse icons, added for the randomizer specifically, the number of which can range for both the amount available and required. Finally, there is the hit list, which marks a handful of the super bosses as required fights, and will unlock the final door once they've all been defeated. We picked the Lucky Emblem Hunt today since it has the best dopamine drip, as we need to gather a total of 30 of the available 50 Lucky Emblems scattered throughout all 3 games. We've actually started off fairly lucky, as we've already got 13 emblems by the time we start. Again, a great part of starting this game after getting so much progress in the other 2. We'll also have tons of extra stat bonuses and some decent gear. That actually is one of the reasons why I waited on starting this game up until now, because I was worried that critical mode might be a bit tough in the randomizer, and I wanted to start off with every advantage I could get. That, and it being true that I was playing in preferred order. Only it was actually ascending order, since I tend to rank Kingdom Hearts above Dark Souls and DS3 above DS1. I know, that's quite the surprise considering what most of this channel is dedicated to. Granted, my actual favorite game ever is a PS1 remake of a Sega Saturn turn-based RPG, so at least nothing makes sense here. Another thing to note with the KH2 randomizer is that I don't generally play this with the enemy randomizer setting on, so every random, Heartless, Nobody, and of course the boss battles will all be in their intended arenas. There is an option to randomize these in the settings, but it is a bit more unstable than in the other 2 games. A lot of Kingdom Hearts 2's bosses have gimmicks that are built directly into their arenas, so the item randomizer is usually enough to keep the game feeling fresh. Otherwise, you can run into a lot of soft locking or straight up crashes as the arenas don't have the proper flags for certain fights. That being said, our world order will also be something randomized as well, meaning that we won't have access to every world right from the start and need to start earning the first and second visits of each one in order to enter them and start making those checks. Alright, with the ground rules settled, let's head into the first world of Kingdom Hearts 2, the 100-acre wood. I may have miscalculated my initial thought on Kingdom Hearts 2 being a legit challenge. Nah, Pooh's World is a legit treasure trove for KH2 rando runs. One time I found 2 of 3 proofs behind the torn pages, so now I check this out as soon as I get the chance. It's a great idea too, because I pick up DS1's Rite of Kindling here. You'll have to take my word for it since the randomizer only says archipelago item every time I pick up something from another game world, but according to the send log, that was indeed the case. Next up, we can take our already upgraded Schmovement, high jump, aerial dodge, and glide, into the world that never was, and make another handful of checks where we pick up the Seath Lord Soul Shard. So after about 10 checks in half as many minutes, we've got 2 great finds for DS1, including one of the 5 keys needed to open the game's final boss. Not a bad start. Okay, now it's time to actually jump into some fights. How's Hollow Bastion sound? That should be a good showing for how difficult this part of the run is going to be. Well, we absolutely blast our way through these nobodies. Not really proving my "this game is as hard as Dark Souls" argument, huh? Well, this is one of the starting areas of the game, and we're already statted up thanks to all the bonuses the other 2 games gave us. Maybe we'll try the next area. Okay, we've moved on to the Olympus Coliseum. Although the real meat and potatoes of this world takes place in the underworld maps, surely the debuff here will cause me some problems. And there's Reflect already, the strongest spell in Kingdom Hearts 2. I mean, it's only Baby Reflect, not Reflect-a-Guh. So maybe this won't make me too powerful? For the DS1 heads not entirely sure what I mean when I say that Reflect is so overpowered, imagine getting homing soul mass with infinite casts in Undead Parish. I might not have the int to get all 5 orbs, but I'm still a walking passive murder machine right now regardless. Am I sure I'm in critical mode? Because I'm absolutely dominating these fools. One cool thing to note before we get into the Pete fight is the Follow the Wind, the Keyblade from Port Royal, which is black and has an axe head for the Keyblade's teeth. I mean, it's really an anchor, since this is the pirate-themed weapon, but it fits the Black Knight axe motif we've been doing in the other 2 games, so I'll keep this on for the rest of the run. The stats are pretty good on this C2 without being the best available, so it's a bit of a win-win. Well, as for the difficulty, this might not be causing us too much struggle, but at least we get the cool Thunder Strat on the Hydra. A unique perk of the randomizer is that we don't have to wait for damage cycles on this boss, since we can cast Thunder from the ground while his heads are too high to reach. In the vanilla version of the fight, you don't learn that spell until after the fight. Alright, well, these are the first visits, and we've got super strong gear and abilities. That's part of the randomizer format, honestly, so that must be why this has been a complete breeze. Give it some time. Trust. I mean, Halloween Town is a little further into the game than the other locations we have available, so we're at least slightly under-leveled for this, even if it is a first visit. Ooh, we almost died on the first boss. I even had to cast Cure. Once. Jokes aside, that Disney Castle key we get as a reward for killing the boss is kind of a huge boon, since it'll give us access to a whole nother world. So this was a cool check. Honestly, we've got a lot of checks we can do on this run. We might actually get through every first visit at this rate. To finish off this world, however, Oogie is almost a problem that nearly causes a death, but since the folks making the randomizer are speedrunners, they set the quality of life changes to remove the boss's second and third phases. Not my favorite change, kind of like every other minigame getting nerfed if not outright removed, but I'm at least still having fun with this, so let's get back to the actual run. So far, for the progress report though, we really haven't been finding much in the last few worlds. Kinda blew our loads with those sick finds in the 100-acre wood and the world that never was. Been a pretty dry seed ever since then. I don't really have any faith in Beast Castle to give me any actual struggle, considering that it's lower level than the last 2 places we visited, and none of the first visit bosses are really all that hard even if we were underleveled. This is also where I realized that even though it's been nearly a year since I last played this game, some of my old speedrunning muscle memory is still here, absolutely blasting me through some of these fights. I mean, these aren't record times or anything, but it's a hell of a lot cleaner than my casual playthroughs were before I started trying to learn the speedrun. The most notable checks here, though, are a handful of lucky emblems, which are, progress on Kingdom Hearts 2, so that's that nice dopamine drip right there. But also we get the Proud Fang, which will give us access to Pride Lands, the Lion King area. And that is cool for a few reasons. One, there's a lot more checks to pick up there. And second, this is the toughest first visit in the game, and some of the boss encounters are rough. So maybe I'll finally be able to show off how hard this game can actually be. And boom, right off the bat, the very first fight of Pride Lands, we've finally reached the point where deaths are starting to add up. I honestly can't believe I made it nearly 2 hours and 5 combat-heavy worlds into the critical mode before I got a legit death. This opening fight only gets me once, but let how quickly that went off the rails go to show how hard this actually can get. Like, that was a wombo combo that I could not escape from. However, after that, it's followed by one of the most check-dense locations in the entire game. And we go around collecting every single chest, as a worse version of the Lion King movie's narrative plays out, but with Heartless. Well, only worse if you don't count the Fat Pete Lion, in which case, this is much, much better. In fact, take note, Hollywood, if you want to improve remakes and reboots and all that noise, put a Fat Pete Lion stumbling over rocks in it. Always an improvement. Anyway, when we get to the end of this place, Scar kicks the absolute shit out of us, killing us about half a dozen times before I wind up having to take the most cowardly run-and-gun tactic possible with magic peppering him from range. Finally, a fight that really warrants the game's inclusion in this challenge run. Also, would you believe that in the 31 checks I found here, not a single one was anything of actual note. No cinders, no Lord Souls, hell, not even a single lucky emblem in this whole place. All that work, and I honestly could have skipped it entirely. Alright, let's put that Disney Castle key we found earlier to good use and check out Disney Castle. This place gives us a few rewards, like a membership card that'll open up the second visit for Hollow Bastion, but even better than that is Second Chance. This one's a huge boon for Sora, considering that this means he won't die outright to a hit that deals enough damage to kill him in one shot, as long as he's above 1 HP. A second hit, or any continued part of a combo, will absolutely smash us to dust though. So it's not a get out of jail free forever card. Otherwise, the only other thing of note is giving the Sora mini shippers, to each their own, no judgment here, I guess, some ammunition as we press that mouse into a wall for about a minute. As far as the gameplay goes, Agrabah is pretty by the numbers. We continue to prove that the first visits really aren't anything to be worried about, even on critical mode. I'll be honest, I haven't done critical mode in years, and I was almost expecting this to be as difficult as the KH3 version of this mode, and yeah, this is really easy at the start at least. We'll get to some more difficulties, but that won't be happening until we return from KH2 after leaving back to Dark Souls. So for now, we breeze through most fights. However, Agrabah is still notable for being a treasure trove of proper checks, such as the Crest of Artorias and a Firekeeper Soul for DS1. While the first only really skips a lengthy run back for the Sif fight, the Firekeeper Soul is a huge boon there. Healing has been a bit of a hassle in both DS1 and DS3, so strengthening the Flask becomes nearly as important of a check as a Lord Soul, which we also find in Agrabah. Neatos, to be specific. Neat. Oh. So a pretty big deal for DS1. Next up is Space Paranoids, the Tron location. Fortunately, this is 2000s era Tron, so no need to worry about running into any of that Tron Ares shit. What we can see is the fun little trick to speed through one of the starting puzzles. As far as sending items goes, the area is pretty bare bones, only really sending the annex key to DS1, so Painted World is certainly on the table now. We do, however, find some cool stuff for Kingdom Hearts 2, like a second Proud Fang for Lion King second visit access, but also the Magnet spell, which pretty much fills out our roster for extremely powerful spells for this game, even if two of the best spells are still at their baby levels right now. Finally on the docket for this first foray into Kingdom Hearts 2 is Port Royal, the Pirates of the Caribbean level. You know, where our weapon of choice for today comes from. So at least that looks fitting in this area, as opposed to everything else about Sora, Donald, and Goofy among these PS2 attempts at realistic graphics, which is to say, goofy as hell. While we're here, we do also manage to upgrade our Reflect to Reflectora, and we even pick up a couple more lucky emblems, but we're really not drowning in good fortune here. Then, by the time we reach the final boss, the gimmick of the fight really starts to cause some problems. See, Barbossa starts having trouble killing me, so instead, he cheats and kills Jack instead. Turns out, Jack dying in the boss fight is a game over for some reason, so we can't ignore our companions like we normally do. Gotta keep him alive for the whole fight. Well, fortunately, the Fantasia we picked up back in Hollow Bastion comes in clutch here. It's no duck flare, but Fantasia's comets get us that sweet win. And with that, we're done with all of the first visits that we have for now. We do have access to a few second visits at this point, but they generally don't have too many extra checks, except for Hollow Bastion and Land of Dragons. But we don't even have access to the first visit of LOD, and I'm saving Hollow Bastion 2 for reasons, you'll see. Either way, for now, that brings us back to DS1. So, while we've been gone from DS1, we've picked up a handful of useful items, like the Rite of Kindling and a Firekeeper Soul, but we still haven't gotten the Lord Vessel, which means we can't warp around the world. We also can't get past any of the gold fog gates without glitches, and we've been going glitchless up until now, so I'm not looking to change anytime soon. In that case, we do have the Peculiar Doll and the Annex Key, which means we can go make a terrible mistake and enter the Painted World, and gather every check in that place. As long as we can survive, that is. Holy shit, that mushroom got hands. Why did the tree have to show up? The fact that my neighbors haven't called the police yet after all of my screaming is proof that we don't care about community in this country anymore. So yeah, Painted World does not go well, and it's hard to pinpoint what the worst part of it all is. Is it the Hydra that obliterates me before I can even get close and kill it? Is it the Dragon Feet that stomp me to death as soon as I enter the square to attempt heading through the Annex key door? Maybe it's the combination of everything, but since I was still trying to keep a death counter at this point in the run, I can tell you that the several hours I spent in this hellhole led to no less than 15 deaths. Although, there were likely more because I can't guarantee that I was being thorough with my death tracking. You know, the reason I stopped tracking altogether by the end. But hey, it was all worth it because I got exactly 1 lucky emblem while I was here. Oh, in Valor form, that's nice too. That one is going to go over like half the audience's heads, I swear. Play Kingdom Hearts, guys. It's as fun as Souls, I promise. And if you don't like the bright, happy, and overly safe story, then play the randomizer and skip the cutscenes. You'll understand the lore of that game about as much as you did DS1 the first time. It's great. Fortunately, for the end of this location, we don't have to fight the boss, since their drops aren't checks anyway. Unfortunately, this one is Asylum Demon, which means that we wasted a very easy boss in a free slot where we don't have to get a kill. Either way, I'm getting the fuck out of here and moving on to better and brighter days. Okay, maybe not brighter, but still, this is less painful. Slightly less painful. Yeah, this bridge is a terrible location for Artorias. So much of fighting this guy is strafing around him and positioning out of his hitboxes. The result is that while we can spot dodge a decent amount of his attacks, some of this is completely unavoidable without the ability to walk or dodge left and right. Equipping some heavy armor makes the difference though, and we're eventually able to face tank his attacks until his drastically reduced health is fully drained. Not sure if this would have worked with my current build in his vanilla location, but it works out here. With that though, we're quickly running out of actual checks, so it's time to run over to the Archipelago client and get ourselves a quick hint. We're looking to figure out where the Lord Vessel is, since that's stopping us from getting the second half of the checks in DS1. Turns out it's in DS3, in the Dreg Heap, which is at the start of the second DLC, which can only be accessed by getting to either the end of the game or the end of the first DLC. Either way, we're heading back to DS3 and hoping we can find a way to hit either of those goals. As we come back to DS3, we've received exactly 0 undead bone shards. So yeah, Estus isn't really going to be a thing for us. That doesn't mean we have to no-hit any bosses, but we're down to about 2 full heals and they will cost 3 or 4 chugs each. Not ideal, but also not impossible, even for me. So, where'd we leave off? Oh right, we're in front of the old Demon King boss fight, who has been replaced by Frida 2 and 3. Yeah, since the Frida and Father are behind the same cutscene trigger as Black Flame, this'll be both of those phases at the same time. And considering that my first attempt struggles against the first phase, well, technically second phase, we decide to turn around and go hunting for that Lord Vessel we got clued for. First up, we need to head back to Firelink because I've been ignoring my shop checks, including Korix, who it turns out had the small doll this whole time. Didn't even need to give him a pyromancy tome to do it. This lets us into Irithyll finally, which is surprisingly much easier than I figured it would be in the randomizer. Like, without the Pontiff Knights and dogs that normally spawn all over this place, running through here is hardly an issue, and nothing that spawned in is as big of a deal as those vanilla enemies to actually chase me down and stop me in my tracks. It's really been a complete 180 from the DS1 enemy spawns, to be honest, where every area has at least one dragon butt that stomps me into the ground if I so much as look in their direction. That being said, the dark room full of enemies is kinda hell. Mostly because I'm still looking for as many checks as I can, but also because some of these enemies are exactly as aggressive and strong as those Pontiff Knights I was talking about before. So yeah, this place is not as free as I'd initially hoped. Still, we get through, and dying for these checks is totally worth it since we find another Firekeeper soul. This should have us at about +3 for the DS1 Estus, which is more than enough to carry us through the rest of that run, especially with the Rite of Kindling already unlocked. Once we're through, it's a quick hop, skip, and a jump down into Irithyll Dungeon, Walking in there, I was pretty worried that the tight hallways might be a problem. However, it really isn't anything near as bad as I assumed. I mean, this place absolutely kills me a handful of times, but it's nowhere near as dastardly as the dark room was, which I had marked as the name in my notes, before finding out that the Archisend log also calls that place the dark room. Guess there's only so many ways to describe a room with no light. We also find the Black Witch Trousers, which makes one hell of a combination with the Desert Pyromancer garb. Feels like I'm playing Code Vein again. Critiquing this does kind of feel like it falls into the you decide the buttons you press category though. Still, funny the emergent gooner bait that can come out of even the most respected of Souls games. Made infinitely better by my beef jerky woman here. Anyway, the real reward comes right at the end in the elevator leading to the Archdragon Peak, where we would normally get the Lightning Blade miracle. It's the Contraption Key, which will get us all the way through the first DLC, as long as there isn't like some bullshit boss there to stop us from finishing the Frida fight. So we're going to skip right from here into the boss fight, because we find nothing of value in Ashes of Ariandel. Who'd have guessed the place would be so close to vanilla? In that case, let's see who has replaced Frida. And it's Phase 1 Gale. Awesome. I mean, this could obviously be worse. It could be Phase 2 Gale. Or hell, it could be Midir in this cramped little room. So we take our lumps and deal with it. Gale's probably my favorite fight in this trilogy anyway, so I really can't complain too much. Even if my Estus is still so low that I basically only get one chance to heal up any damage he gives me. That being said, even I can learn this well enough to take as few hits as possible. Two huge aspects to figuring him out are his jump attack, which can be rolled and quickly countered. Then there's also the full combo, where he slaps all around the arena and ends on that same jumping attack. For this one, run away, not dodge or strafe, simply turn and run until he finishes his combo and then again roll the jumping attack and counter. One thing to note on that counter, however, the Black Knight Great Axe has a terrible attack when coming out of a dodge, where we slam the axe into the ground in front of us and we wind up running into a problem of range with it, where the hitbox doesn't extend far enough to overcome the collision between us and the boss. Like, you can literally see my character getting pushed backwards while performing this attack and then whiffing even though I'm as close as humanly possible to him. So try to wait a second after the roll to make sure you use a regular attack, not this rolling one. But after a hot minute of learning the fight to get through it well enough, and we can get to the second boss for Phase 2. Yeah, did you forget that there would be a second boss? Because I did. You know what? We'll do another dramatic recreation of my actual reaction to finally beating Gale for the first time. Me. Alright. Almost there. Almost there. One more hit. Don't greed. Oh, thank goodness. Crap, right. Okay. Who is it? Couldn't be worse than Gale. Oh, fuck this! I really should start recording my audio for randomizers, because surprises like this are hilarious. Regardless, that's straight up not happening. Even with Gale switching sides halfway through the encounter and helping me out against Nameless, I was not ready to grind this out again, while needing to improve on Gale with every attempt as well. I'm almost there, but oh boy, I got better things I can do. Let's head back to Kingdom Hearts for some fun grinding. First up, we've got Hollow Bastion Second Visit. Mostly because this place has the most checks of any second visit, and I'm unsure if I need to do this in order to get into Timeless River, which also has a decent number of checks. When we get here, we're immediately beat over the head with some story stuff, but that's not what we're here for, so we skip, hello Mickey in a hood, skip. Our first big find here actually comes on final form levels, which we can pretty easily burst up in the fight against the nobodies after Mickey shows up. This is also a great time to note that my randomizer settings speeds up leveling for Sora, his forms, and summons, since grinding those out can be tedious and time consuming. Again, speedrunners will design as much tedium as they can out of mod, and this one I actually thank them for. Would make the randomizer way more annoying, especially since some checks are on these levels. Like how I find a Bone Fist on Final Form, which means we can also head into Halloween Town second visit when we're ready. The big benefit of coming to Hollow Bastion, however, isn't the plentiful farming opportunities, but core, or the Cavern of Remembrance, a new area added to the final mix version of the game. I say new because if you only ever played this in the North American and PAL versions on PS2, then this will be a completely new area for you. But this stuff shipped with Final Mix in Japan like 20 years ago. It's a super difficult endgame level that pits Sora and co. against a handful of supercharged Heartless in a series of gauntlets. Think of it like a really condensed Silk Song from 2006 without the runbacks. We really shouldn't be here this early, especially not in critical mode, and there is a skip for pretty much every single check that's pretty fun to do actually if we wanted to. However, we've been avoiding skips and glitches, so I still won't be doing that today. Also, how am I supposed to prove to you Souls-like diehards that Kingdom Hearts is worth your time if I skip the best combat arenas in the entire game? Altogether, this place racks up like a dozen deaths for me, and it really isn't even worth the effort, since we don't find any useful checks here. The best thing we get is some torn pages to go check on 100 Acre Wood again, but there's nothing worth noting there either, at least not from that specific torn page. Still, getting through here requires a certain amount of mastery of the game's mechanics, and I pass with dull, limping colors. Once we leave core, it's time for Demix. Not gonna lie, on my first time through the critical mode, this guy stomped me so hard, he literally haunted my fucking dreams. I was an adult in college at that point, by the way. This is why I never go to bed on a loss anymore. A mantra that certainly won't have heavy ramifications for my mental health in the future. Anyway, that's all to say that we stomped the shit out of him, and Reflect is your best friend in this fight. Like, we whooped him so bad, he didn't even summon his 99 water clone desperation move. Unprecedented form. From me. There's apparently a super consistent strat to do this like every time, but I never said I was a good speedrunner. Then a few more things happen, we get some hype moments with the Final Fantasy characters, Goofy dies, and we get to the 1000 Heartless fight. 1000 enemies on a PS2. I understand the tricks they pulled to do it, but I'm still impressed. Halo 2 sold on this concept as a lie, and Square did it in a cave with a box of scraps and a couple $1 million of Disney money. Oh, I guess it wasn't really scraps. 2 more lucky emblems and an undead bone shard. Honestly, worth my time. But time still runs thin, and so we must away again. This time into the distant past, where copyrights no longer hold. Ah, fuck. We're never getting another Timeless River visit because of the public domain stuff, huh? Man, I was all happy to go in the monochrome world and whatnot, and now I made myself sad. Maybe wailing on Pete will make me feel better. Yeah, that did it. I like beating the shit out of that fat cat bastard. Although, I think I might have upset him a bit more than I meant to with that. Look, he's all torn up. Hey, Pete, no need to beat yourself up like that. It wasn't that bad of an ass whooping. This is going to be, though. Hell, I might not have time to get through all of our rewards from Timeless River while we kick this cat's teeth in. But we'll try to get through them rapid fire. Our first ice cream for Twilight Town access, a Beast Claw for Beauty and the Beast second visit, and another lucky emblem. That brings us to 25, by the way. We're getting close to opening up the finale, although we do still need 2 Way of the Dawns in order to get deeper into the world that never was. Alright, let's start doing some more second visits. At this point, we don't really have a lot of check dense options left. So for now, we settle for Pride Lands, which only gets us a total of 4 new checks, none of which get us anything. But this is another one of those strange quality of life additions to the randomizer, which removes the first 2 sections of the hyena fight at the beginning of the level. Again, strange, but I get it. This is very few people's favorite part of the game, so it's not like I'll really lose any sleep over missing out on this. Oh, and the big boss of the area goes fine. Certainly not a clean win, and we nearly die a few times, saved only by second chance actually, but we make it through without too much extra trouble. This one might actually be worth relearning the speed strat for if I want to keep doing KH2 rando runs, especially for content. We'll skip pretty quickly through the next 2 locations because we really don't find anything of note here, and the best advancement we get towards the actual run is knocking a few extra checks off the list, rather than finding any key items that lead us to opening up the doors to the final bosses. These are the Olympus Coliseum and Halloween Town second visits. Both have some pretty fun boss fights, and we scrape through both by the skin of our teeth. But yeah, really nothing in the way of progression here to speak of. Not even anything to work on improving any of our builds. Next up is another first visit, which naturally means that everything here is drastically too low level for how strong we are now. But we do find another undead bone shard for DS3 while we're here in Twilight Town. Honestly, that one is huge, considering that this might mean that we'll actually have decent heals once we head back to fight the Gale Nameless King duo. Everything else, though, is pretty superfluous. It's okay, Sora. We'll find something useful soon. Maybe when we revisit Port Royal? You know, I really could get a lot of mileage out of typing Electric Boogaloo for all of these second visits, but I have more class than that. But at least it would give me something to talk about in a world like Port Royal second visit, other than, we got Limit Form and a fire upgrade. They won't be relevant moving forward. Okay, you know what? If KH2 isn't going to give us any good drops, then maybe it's time to give us a good fight. And by that, I mean Zeldin. This is easily one of the most difficult fights in Kingdom Hearts 2, and randomizer boosted stats or no, this dude absolutely flattens me. Boy, it's like we're right back in that fight with Gale and Nameless King, huh? Well, except for the fact that I can get Mickey Mouse to come personally pick my ass up off the asphalt. Actually, I think this might be a cobblestone bridge, but the point still holds. Thank you, Mickey. I still wasn't good enough multiple times to get the win, even after you saved me multiple times in a row. That is, you know, until I fell back on the cheat code that is Final Form and absolutely devoured what remained of Zeldin's health. Before we head back to the other games, let's check out one more challenge. This one we won't be finishing because it's our first absent silhouette against Zexion, the book nerd. Yeah, this fight goes fine for about 10 seconds, and then he traps me in the reading dimension and tells us to study. Granted, I don't think this is generally what teachers mean when they tell you to hit the books. Otherwise, we get our asses handed to us when they hit back. This one is a pretty strong contender for getting once more the combo version of Second Chance that will let us survive a combo without getting insta-killed. Kind of a necessity for me to get through any of these absent silhouette or data fights, if I'm being completely honest. So I leave this behind for now, thinking maybe I'll come back for it, but spoiler alert, we never do have to actually come back and fight this guy. Instead, we'll be doing an even harder boss later. Alright, that was a fun, if unproductive detour. But I got to blow off some steam blasting through Heartless and Kingdom Hearts. Really disproving the thesis of this run again, but at least Zeldin was a worthy challenge. In that case, let's get back to DS3. We have a major fight to finish. Every time I jump back into DS3, it's like, bruh, cool it with the items. Ooh, Undead Bud Shard. Hey, remember how Kingdom Hearts wouldn't tell me what items it was sending out? Yeah, this was actually how I realized I'd even gotten some Undead Bone Shards since I don't have my trackers up. Because, you know, this is a scrappy underground production and definitely not a desperate attempt at brand building on a shoestring budget to eventually sell books. Going that John Green method but through Dark Souls challenge runs. It's not working. Anyway, with those 2 extra Undead Bone Shards and the Estus Ring, we can now full heal after 2 Estus Chugs, as opposed to 4. And that gives us exactly what we need to challenge Sister Gale one final time. 2 final times. This was honestly going to be a last-ditch effort to actually save this run in the first place. Learning these fights, not until I could win, but until I couldn't lose. It wasn't a choice anymore. This was the reality of the situation, and I needed to be the absolute king of both Gale and Nameless at the same time. And damn it, that's exactly what I did. I fought, I learned, I dodged, I missed, I died, I tried and tried and tried, until eventually, I wasn't trying anymore. By the end, I was doing. Because that's how you get good. You start by being bad, getting up, trying again, and eventually, getting it fucking done. Onward to the drug heap. It's not much further now, down a few drops, up through the church, and we finally grab what we're looking for. The Lord Vessel. Nestled in the back of a church, filled with enemies that pop into place trying to block my way as they do. DS1 is finally out of BK mode. Thank goodness. That being said, we still have plenty of progression we could be making in DS3 at this point that we've been ignoring. First off, we'll finish checking out the Dreg Heap after finding the Lord Vessel. The next most interesting find is the Covenant of Artorias, one of 2 requirements to take on the 4 kings, although the fight likely won't even be necessary thanks to the fact that boss rewards aren't randomized in DS1. I'll definitely have to fiddle with the settings if I want to do something like this again, because some of the DS1 randomization really didn't hit the same highs as DS3 or Kingdom Hearts 2. Heading back to the Painted World, we also find another lucky emblem. 4 more to go before we can finish up Kingdom Hearts. We also fight the Champion Gravetender replacement, who is Osiris. He's a bit tankier here, but not really a problem. This dude's pretty easy as long as you stand away from the telegraphless charge. Hit and runs are the name of the game in Phase 2. Then we can head into the Profane Capital, considering we'd already found it back when we came through Irithyll Dungeon to get the contraption key. Here we find another Covenant of Artorias. Strange that the randomizer would make duplicates of that item, with 2 in DS3 alone. At the end of the relatively short location, we also get a solid boss fight out of the Yorm replacement. Would you look at that? It's Phase 2 Gale. Thankfully, we won't have a second phase after him here, so this is a mostly free fight, since I'd so recently learned this boss's damn moveset inside and out, even if the second phase does switch up Gale's moves a little bit with the addition of the crossbow and the magic rings. With the Profaned Capital finished, or at least the boss finished, we can move on through the rest of Irithyll and into Anor Londo, which means we get to play Who's That Replacement? That's right, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, it's time for your favorite betting game show. Check the gamba in the chat now to see if you're gonna be a winner. Personally, I've got my money on something that will not fit in this arena, like Midir. Alright, lock in those guesses. Everyone else voting Midir? Great. Well, it's Pontiff Frida. And looks like the only winner in this gamba was me and one chatter named FromSoftFeetX69. Okay, well, this is basically backstab farming the boss. That is, if I can actually line my damn backstabs up for the life of me. The way she twists her body around catches me up at first, but we lock in quick and get an easy first try win. See? Kingdom Hearts is as hard as DS3, because both are piss easy when you know what you're doing. Well, with Frida down, we can head into Anor Londo, where the randomizer once again gives us an easy way through what should be another Archer obstacle course. Turns out, when you swap out half of the enemies, the intended difficulty can get pretty heavily nerfed for locations like this. It can be hell for other spots, looking at you, Dark Room, but for those more meticulously designed areas where the specific enemies being placed around are the crux of the challenge, it's a breeze. Finally, we make it to Aldrich, who is this time replaced by the Abyss Watchers. Not terribly lore inaccurate, I suppose, since Aldrich is related to the Deep, which is at least analogous to the Abyss, though I'm not super clear on the lore here and the differences between the Abyss and the Deep. They honestly sound like 2 names given to the same thing by 2 different groups that found it independently of each other. Anyway, this fight is a bit of a surprise, and considering that I couldn't see any other corpses on the ground, I wasn't entirely sure if either of us would get our backup. That is, until his showed up. What I also didn't expect was the fire-boosted second phase. You know, because that's normally locked behind a cutscene, which the randomizer for DS1 and 3 has so far split between 2 separate fights up until now. You know, that's how we wound up with the Gale Nameless King duo. If I had to guess, this is probably an effect of the character data for both forms being compiled under a single ID, while other bosses have separate IDs for separate phases. The same thing actually happens to Melania in the 5th Mat's Elden Ring randomizer. It honestly feels kind of like an arbitrary design decision, but in this case, this is on FromSoft's coding and ID functioning, not on the mod creator's end of things. With the main Lords of Cinder dead, we once again do have some items that we can still hunt down, but for now, since we've found the Lord Vessel and our progress is currently blocked by not having the Basin of Vows, let's go check DS1 since we now have tons of locations to check over there. I mean, it could be anywhere, so this isn't a sure thing, but DS1's been on the back burner for a while now, and I'd like to get back to the basics. Let's start getting back into DS1 by heading into the DLC, which naturally means fighting the Sanctuary Guardian replacement. In this case, we get ONS, Only the first phase though, since there's no cutscene trigger to spawn the other phase. However, what I certainly wasn't prepared for here was the fact that killing Ornstein was not enough to end the fight, and I still had to actually kill Smo in order to attain victory. Not gonna lie, I wouldn't mind this being a setting for vanilla ONS in some future runs, but the convenience is one of the only reasons some challenge runs are even doable. So I won't get too carried away with wishing for more difficulty out of Dark Souls. Still, the added health bar isn't too much to deal with, and we make it through. Next up is the Royal Woods, a location that I always assumed to be called Ulasil Forest or Sanctuary or something else. So the Archie item logs telling me that this was classified as RW really tripped me up. I also have no idea exactly how many checks this place has, because I either run through Royal Woods without engaging with any enemies, or meme roll through the shortcut in most runs. So I know where to find some items, but certainly not all. And there's a whole side path I haven't done since my first casual playthrough of the DLC, which is a complete mystery to me. Still, we do manage to get some good pickups while we're here, including another Undead Bone Shard for DS3, and a Lucky Emblem for KH2. 3 more before the finale there, by the way. Not a bad haul, if I do say so myself. Then, of course, we get the boss fight. And the replacement here really makes the cutscene a work of art. Taurus Demon mapped onto Artorias' animation rig is immaculate. All that muscle and fur really doesn't fit well on the knight's slender figure. He also doesn't really hold a candle to Artorias' aggression and speed when we get into the fight, making this a quick and easy win before we head into the rest of the DLC, which is not a quick nor easy trek. I think I hate it here, not gonna lie. The worst part this time is definitely the Hydra that replaced the Chain Prisoner at the end of Ulasil Township. It's not terrible to kill it, but getting there is as much of a disaster as it was back in Painted World. Our only saving grace here is that this one seems to be really non-aggressive once I get close enough to slap its body to death with my Black Knight Great Axe. At least we get a decent number of checks for our trouble. Between the township, the Chasm of the Abyss, and the Calamite Arena before getting that actual fight underway, we managed to find Cinders of the Lord for DS3, the Prince Lothric ones, the Way to the Dawn for Kingdom Hearts 2, and finally, 3 lucky emblems we need. We are 1 check away from Kingdom Hearts 2 now, by the way, so prepare for us to go clean that up soon. For now, we've got 2 bosses to clean up. First is the Calamite replacement, who doesn't actually swap the model for the arrow cutscene, nor do they swap out with the flying, fire-breathing Calamite. Instead, we can actually see Nito way in the distance when we enter the boss arena. It's a bit of a walk for him to get to us, but as a benefit of him starting off so far away, if we let him approach us, his Skelly boys won't follow along. The only problem that arises is that since this isn't Nito's normal arena, the 2-handed block strat doesn't work against his ground stab. Not sure if it's the slightly uneven terrain or a difference in elevation of where the stab spawns or whatnot, but yeah, we actually have to roll it now, which is easy enough, as long as you roll as soon as Nito's arm starts to move downward. Otherwise, he's a pretty easy win in an arena this size. Finally for the DLC is Manus, who is replaced by the 4 Kings. Love the detail about the 4 Kings' fathers of the Abyss being plural. Good job to the 5th Mat on the attention to detail on the boss rando mod. I also love that it still works with the archipelago. I was kind of worried that this would brick up some point and stop the run, but it never really had any trouble in DS1. Oh, and the boss goes fine. This is actually when I finally realized that killing bosses wasn't counting as a check, meaning that 4 Kings was kind of unnecessary. But boss fights are fun, so we'll keep doing them. And now it's time to make a huge mistake. So, most of the time, randomizers run on a type of logic that attempts to stop players from getting softlocked into locations without having a way out. In DS1, that pretty exclusively means not being able to leave places like Painted World, or heading into the DLC without having a way to warp out, or heading into Duke's Archives without the Archive Tower Giant Door key. Now, I'd hoped that this logic would mean that I couldn't possibly enter this place and get stuck without some way of finding the key somewhere else. So, even if it wasn't in its vanilla location, it should be in one of the other games, and I needed to be a bit more thorough. You know what? In that case, I'm glad I killed Seath as the Sif replacement before coming here, because fuck him locking me away in this damn cage, the bastard. Well, after getting in here and getting stuck behind the door, I decided I must be missing something in a different world. Went back to DS3 for a bit, picked up a couple items I knew I'd left but hadn't been thorough enough to grab until now, one of which was KH2's Once More, which now means that we can go toe-to-toe with some super bosses, like the Data and Absent Silhouettes, one of which we've already seen insta-kills us if we don't have Once More. Aside from that though, we found nothing really of worth, except for some interesting information. Turns out that after I make it past Demon Princes, which were replaced by Lorien Phase 2 with Lothric on his back, we can only go so far into the Ring City before the game crashes at the swamp. Every time. Which is to say, twice in a row, and then I abandoned it. Now, I've heard about this exact problem happening before for folks attempting the DS3 randomizer. From what I've seen, there is a fix to get further in here, but I'm so terrible at troubleshooting mods that I'm surprised these things even started up in the first place. So maybe next time. There's nothing important back there right now anyway. In the meantime, I also learned that while I found some good items on this quest, none of them were going to get us unstuck in DS1. And nothing ever would, because that was still back in DS1 itself. Yeah, we're hard stuck here, actually. Nothing we can do to get out, except type a command in the Archie console to get ourselves the key to get out automatically. Turns out, it was in Blighttown. I probably should have explored that place more thoroughly when I was there, but how could I have known? Will it bite us in the ass to not fully explore this place now? I don't know. Ask later when I have to clip this audio, but with an echo to show that it's from the past. Now that we're out, we can finish up Duke's Archives, which was barely worth the trouble. Our best find here is a Firekeeper soul, and the boss of the area turned out to be Bed of Chaos, so not even a fun fight to end off this mess. Not worth the effort, or getting softlocked, or whatever. At this point though, after crashing twice and literally being locked away forever, I decided to use my remaining hints in order to figure out the path towards finishing off DS1, and letting that start the dominoes towards the end. This actually feels like a good time to describe the hint system in the archipelago. I'm using the basic hinting system for Archie, which means that I gain points towards getting hints every time I find a check or send an item between games. And finding out where an item is across the 3 games costs 10 hint points. There are other options, such as linking the hints to Sudoku or a jigsaw puzzle, but I didn't really think I'd need hints until I got hard stuck multiple times. Alright, the end begins in DS3, looking for DS1's Key of the Seal, which we found by checking out the rest of Profaned Capital. You know, that entire dungeon that we completely ignored the last time we were here. With the Key to the Seal, we can head back to DS1 to find the Basin of Vows in New Londo. Then, with the Basin of Vows, we can head into the Cursed King's Garden to fight the Osiris replacement. And it's... Half-Light. Damn. And here I hoped it would be an easy run to the end at this point. It's not exactly an easy fight, and Half-Light loves to auto-parry us if his shield is ever out. Thankfully, the Black Knight Great Axe staggers the shit out of this guy, and on a quick reset after he slaughters me, we can absolutely pummel him into the ground. Almost feels like I lost on points, but I'm at least through. This then leads to the Untended Graves, where we fight the Champion Gundyr replacement, Champion Dancer. Honestly, it's fights like this that make me question whether or not the Black Knight Greatsword was a good idea. Because this should ideally be a slightly beefed up version of Dancer, since we're 2 bosses removed from her vanilla location. And yet, here we are, spanking her so hard that I almost feel bad for the beating she's taking. Really is something. Finally, we can get the Path of the Dragon gesture from the Shrine Handmaiden here in the dark version of Firelink. Extremely vanilla fine, not gonna lie. This actually glitched out for me too, and I had to spawn the gesture in as well. The run has been truly cursed at this point, huh? This will let us into Archdragon Peak, where we can find the final Lord Soul for DS1. Alright, time to head back to Lordran and put the Gwyn replacement in the ground. Only one more boss between the Chosen Undead and the end. All we need to do is drop off the Lord Souls at the Lord Vessel and make our way through that final fog wall. On my way in though, I wonder who it's going to be. I mean, we haven't fought Gwyn yet, so that would be funny if he's vanilla. It could also be one of the Asylum Demon clones, like Demon Fire Sage or Stray Demon. Honestly, from the bosses that are left in the pool, pretty much anyone would be easy. Well, except for that. I thought we were through with you. Turns out, I'd considered him out of the pool before, since I'd already fought the duo versions that had been placed outside of Andre and at the start of Anor Londo, but had never actually fought the real boss version. Cool, the boss I'm the worst at besides Menace. What a way to end this absolutely cursed run. But even the biggest challenge in DS1 won't be enough to stand in my way for long. I've fought too much, overcome greater obstacles, and now it is a simple matter of seeing this through to the end. Alright, with everything released, that means that Kingdom Hearts 2 is actually in go mode. In all of that pathing, we also found both ways to the dawn, which means we can clear out the rest of the world that never was. It's time for the classic Kingdom Hearts boss rush. We all know the Kingdom Hearts boss rush, right? I'm still writing this under the assumption that at least half of you watching have never played these games. Anyway, this starts with Roxas, which means we can start this off with some tasty cheese. See, to kill Roxas easily, you need to dodge 4 attacks in a row so that he'll attempt a clash. If we succeed here, we can steal his weapons, which will hit him without notching up his retaliation counter. And as long as we can keep him shoved into the wall, he can't react. Then, it's as easy as selecting a spell to deal the final hit in order to end the fight. Now, what would be a good thematic way to kill him? Maybe we can use fire, so it's like Axel is killing him? No, that sounds mean. I mean, thunder would hit from pretty much any location, so that's a safe bet. Oh, you know what? Reflect is always a good way to get to the win. That didn't really work out, did it? My darn indecision. Guess I'll have to fight him for real and have fun with it. I said fun, not easy. Dude's kind of a beast. Easily the hardest mandatory boss in Final Mix now. Fun fact, this was only a cutscene in the original PS2 version of the game. Funner fact, more fun fact, other fact, I didn't know the fight was added to the game my first time playing through the Final Mix version, and he killed me while I'd set my controller down to watch the cutscene. Okay, with Roxas finally dead, returned to Sora's heart, we can go murder Xigbar. Remember folks, growing up isn't realizing that Axel or Terra were secretly the real hot ones over Riku, it's realizing that our silver fox Xigbar is the baddie daddy of Kingdom Hearts.
You clever little sneak!
Oh my. Right now though, he's a brutally difficult fight for us in critical mode. I'll be honest, I never really took this guy seriously until I gave Final Mix a real try. He's no Zeldin, but he really only feels easy in the vanilla game because we normally have our entire kit before fighting him, which we have right now. Ah, right. That's how I get this nasty kill on him, because the full kit makes Sora into a commie in this game. Alright, we skip some cutscenes, and we're at Luxord. More of a gimmick fight than an actual fight, and in critical mode, it has a tendency to kill me before I even get the chance to fight. But a little jumping into Luxord's face later, and we finally get into the fight for real. Only to die again. It's fine, I've got this. Glide out of the desperation move, one day I'll learn the strat to actually skip it, but for now, this gets me through. Now we get Saïx, who ideally should actually be more difficult than Luxord, but he's not the worst. The real trick is to remember that you're not actually invincible while you've got his weapon as you prepare to hit him out of his own berserker rage. That being said, being able to bully him really is a benefit here, as some attack combinations, like Duck Flare, Peter Pan's Endless Combo, or some abuse of Final Form's ridiculous damage, can get us through the fight without too much extra trouble. It's a hard-fought victory, but we make it through in one attempt, which was better than our record with Luxord at least. And next we get some cutscenes. Pete and Mickey talk for the only time in the entire series. Don't quote me on that, I might be forgetting Coded. Then again, who remembers Coded? This then brings us to the final fights against Xemnas. It's split into, well, like 10 segments, but the randomizer keeps it condensed to about 5. Not gonna lie, it does mess with the pacing, but it's certainly more convenient, I guess. The first phase really puts a strong foot forward, with this initial encounter against Xemnas being a one-on-one between him and Sora. It's cinematic, it's engaging, the pacing is a great back and forth of fast-paced engagements with tense moments of anticipation, while he teleports mid-fight to stop either party from wombo comboing until the fight is over. But even as he attempts to control the pace, I still blast him down long before he can grab me for a second trip up the building. And so now we get to the real final gauntlet. A fight against some random Heartless, honestly, with everything the mod removes, I'm surprised this managed to stay. Then we get Chair Xemnas, which comes down to casting Reflect once and then an explosion combo finish one more time. Then he tries to plead to our baser instincts.
There's more to a heart than just anger or hate. It's full of all kinds of feelings. Don't you remember?
Unfortunately, I don't.
Same, bro. Same. Second, chair Zemnis, more of the same. Reflect, fly, Riku explodes a building with his keyblade. Rinse, repeat, time for the real show. And by that I mean the part that not only has the chance to kill me, but does several times before I can even get through the first combo. I'll admit that I'm fumbling here a bit, and greed is the cause of plenty of these deaths, as I try to mix in some reflects where I clearly don't have room open for them. Once we're through the first flurry of blows though, he spends most of his time playing keep away, forcing us to either chase him down or muscle our way through his attacks in order to actually get that win. But get the win we do. And then there was one. It's time to end this. Now back in DS3, we hit a crash in Lothric Castle that literally restarts my computer. I'd show footage of it, but strange things happen to recorded footage when not only OBS, but the entire PC fucking dies for 5 minutes. My heart stopped, by the way. Was terrified that I'd bricked my PC. Okay, but let's get to what we came here for. To fight the Dragon Slayer armor replacement, the Deacons of the Deep. Fun fact, turns out that the incomplete butterflies in this arena are specifically an effect of the arena itself, not the Dragon Slayer armor boss. So even though we're fighting Deacons here, a boss that already likes to overwhelm us with massive numbers, the butterflies also decide to join in on the fight once we cross the halfway point. Even more fun fact, the Deacons are kinda easy. Most fun fact of all, this boss had the final cinders I needed in order to challenge the soul of Cinder in the convergence at the end of time. Alright, final fight of the run. Let's see something impressive now, shall we? Oh, it's Ancient Wyvern. Or should I say, Wyvern of Cinder. I guess I did say that this run was Miyazaki's dream, so it does make sense that the last fight would be 5 minutes of staring at feet, even if it's flying lizard feet rather than giant lady feet like he normally likes. Never quite pinned Miyazaki to also be a scaly, but hey, who doesn't have at least one shark mama crush out there? Well, now we can finally sit down and light the fire one last time. It's a small flame, barely smoldering bright enough to engulf even ourselves, but we're still burning all the same. And you know what? I don't know if I've really made my case well enough that all three of these games deserve their equal footing in this run. So let's take one more crack at Kingdom Hearts 2 and let's pass over all the other data battles and puzzle bosses and get to the single most difficult thing this game has to offer. Let's take on Lingering Will, something I've actually never done in critical mode. Yep, this right here is the toughest bastard in all of Kingdom Hearts 2. A boss so difficult that I can't even get a single hit off him in almost 30 minutes of attempts, each of which is only seconds before he absolutely obliterates me. Granted, once I do finally nail that first hit on him, well, I guess I still haven't beaten him in critical mode. Not really, at least. So yeah, without some challenge restriction or with previous experience fighting him years ago, and even after taking on Gale into Nameless King with a weapon that whiffed half of its counters, I'm still not that guy. Not against Lingering Will. This guy is built different. Hey, it's that time again. The end of the video where I invite folks to come check out the Patreon. Link in the description, and make good on the rewards for those currently pledged. Patreon members get early access to new content and their names written in the credits at the end of videos. And those who pledge in the top tiers get their names read out, like our DevBox designers, Genghis Braun, and our DevBox developers, Azul. Thanks for your support, and thanks for watching.